metaphor that we're going to use in this program as you build and grow your information product business is that you're working to win the race in an Indy car. Okay? You're working to win the race in an Indy car. And there are a couple of key aspects to winning an IndyCar race. You need a car and you need a driver. And they need to be working in unison. Now for this analogy, we're going to say that the car is your products and your marketing. Specifically, the car's body is your products and the car's engine is your marketing. The power plant of your information marketing business is your marketing. And the driver is you. You need to know how to maneuver that car. You need to understand how it works. Now, it turns out that IndyCar drivers are very interested in their cars. They get involved in the design of their cars. I was talking to my friend Offer last night about it. Many of them have actually designed their own motors for their cars, and they're involved in the tuning of the motor. So is that interesting to you, that an IndyCar driver would help design the motor that's in the car? Why would he do that, or she? Why? Because they know that the motor is the power plant. It's the critical element, that they've got to be in touch with the power plant of their car. They've got to know everything about it. They've got to know if it makes a strange sound. They've got to know what that means. They've got to know if it's not making a particular strange sound, what that means. They have to be involved. Now, same thing with the body of the car. These cars are very complex. They're very aerodynamic. They have to optimize to cut through the wind and also stay on the ground. So, likewise, drivers are involved in the design of the car, and they tweak little things, and they go out on the track, and the driver runs around the track a couple of times, and they come back and they say, take the wing on the back of the car and lower it a little bit. Drop it a ½ inch. And the driver knows that because of the track conditions and the humidity and the temperature. You follow? That's how in touch with the car the driver is. And that's how in touch with your marketing and your products and your customers you need to be if you're going to win. Now, what happens if you take all of the best Indy car parts in the world, the most expensive car parts in the world, and you throw them all together very quickly? What do you get? You get something that looks like that. That was a bad day for a couple of people. But really, that's what you get. You get junk. You get a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. Now, unfortunately, for most people that start information product businesses, this is what it looks like in the beginning. Okay, not in the end. They throw a heap of junk together, and then they stand back and they wonder why it doesn't run around the track and win the race. They don't put any intention. They don't teach themselves about how these things work. It takes a lot of time and attention to build an information product business. In order for it to work, all the pieces must come together. In order to make that car so that it runs around the track smoothly and looks effortless, you have to build all the components, put them all together, and then get them working. How well would an Indy car work if it didn't have the motor in the car, if the motor was sitting outside the car and they weren't connected to each other? What about the drive shaft from the motor to the wheels? What if you disconnected that? How well would it work? What if you just took one of the wheels off? One wheel. What is that, like 5% of the car or something? You still have 95% of an Indy car. How well is it going to work? In order for your information product business to work, you have to build all of the components and then you have to connect them up to each other, which requires a little bit of persistence, a little bit of determination. You got to get it all working. But once it's all connected and you fire up the motor and then it starts to run and you can see it move a little bit, You get your first sales, you get your first customers, you get people visiting your website, you see that it's possible. That's what inspires you. That's what fuels you to really tune it up and really get it working well. So stick with it. Build the whole car. Learn how the car works. Learn how the engine works. Learn how it all connects to itself, and make sure that it's running before you decide whether or not to continue. Who's committed to getting their car built? Okay, good. Now I want to talk about a couple of important mindset shifts that you need to make in order to build your car, in order to get it built right from the beginning. In life, all we've got is our mind, from one perspective. If you can't perceive, if you can't think well, if you can't recognize the patterns that you need to recognize in life, if you can't put together the puzzle pieces that you need to put together, if you can't assemble your puzzle, if you can't perceive the pieces in the first place or assemble it, you can't get anything done. It just doesn't work. You're going to be walking around like a blind person with a stick in the dark. And I've discovered that mindset shifts are the most powerful, highest leverage way to really leapfrog ahead, okay? Shifting your mindset up front. So I'm going to give you a couple of important mindset shifts. And these mindset shifts will help you shift from what I call the expert mindset to the marketer mindset. And here's the problem. Experts on particular topics, they get this weird thing, we might call it expertitis. And experts feel like, I've invested all this time to learn this information, and the world should beat a path to my door. They should show up and try to just force the money into my hand so that I can talk about some of the things that I've learned in a casual way, and they should be smart enough to know that I'm a genius. And I really shouldn't have to get into any of that marketing kind of stuff, because that's where experts tend to be at. Experts tend to feel that marketing and sales are second-class jobs. They don't like them. They think that's stuff for common people that don't have ethics or morals. Anyone relate what I'm saying here? Right? Talk to any university professor who writes a book. Okay, I see some people laughing here. Do we have university professors that are writing books? So talk to any university professor that writes a book and then feels like everyone should buy it. And then when it doesn't sell, they blame the whole thing on the book publishing company. Oh, it was their fault because they didn't market it well. Sales and marketing are considered by experts typically to be second-class jobs. They're not legit. They're not something that you'd actually want to tell anyone you do. The irony, of course, of it is that I've had many, many experts come up to me after I've spoken at programs like this one, and they go, oh, I've been looking for someone like you for 20 years. I created all this great stuff, and I just need someone to market it for me, which I think is interesting. So if you're going to be successful in information products, you need to switch from being an expert to being a marketer. You need to learn the marketing. You need to realize that it's not about the content, it's about the marketing. And once you understand marketing, you'll create products that sell themselves. If you're trying to play the game of talking people into buying what you're selling, you already lost. You already lost. That's why most of the most successful information marketers that I know are marketers first and experts second. They make being a marketer the highest priority. Many of them, and you really have to know your marketing to do this, but many of them have made their millions selling products that they're not even an expert on the topic. Because they're such a good marketer, they go and get the expert to create the content. Does that make sense? Experts feel that people should know the value of things when they see them. Marketers know that people have to be educated to the value. Experts just take it for granted. Yeah, when they see it, they should know how valuable this is, and if they don't, they're stupid. Marketers know that customers and prospects need to be educated to the value. You need to put it into terms that they can understand. As I mentioned, experts think that they should outsource their marketing and sales. Marketers know that the marketing and the sales, that is the work, that that's where it's at, and that if they're not a marketing expert, they're basically going nowhere fast. Experts feel that they have evolved to the point where they should be able to talk about whatever they want. And marketers know that the only channel that other people are tuned to is WIIFM, which is what's in it for me. That your brilliant ideas as an expert, they don't care about them. And if your prospect or your customer hears you talking like you think you're smart and cool in this day and age, they just tune out. Any pretense or arrogance, they don't like that stuff. They want to learn things that they can relate to from people that they can relate to that are like them. This is a little bit of a blow to the ego for a lot of experts, people that really know their stuff, who feel entitled. I got a PhD. I spent 20 years working in this business. I learned everything there is to know. I put the best theoretical textbook on the topic in the world. It has to be because other people are screwing up that I'm not selling more of it. It has to be someone else's fault other than me. And the answer is simple. Become a marketer. Learn marketing. Almost all of what you're going to learn in this program is marketing. We're going to learn how to create content and products and books and email autoresponders and all those kinds of things. But the way we're going to learn it is through the marketing lens. We're going to learn the marketing way to do it so that we create things that people, by definition, already want. Remember what I said? If you're trying to talk people into wanting what you're selling, you've lost already. If you're trying to convince people to buy, you've already lost. Now, one of the most powerful things that marketers do that experts don't is marketers think in needs and niches. Okay? Marketers think in needs and niches. So marketers start with the need of the customer. What most authors and teachers do is they start with what they've got. Well, in my book, I teach this and that and the other. And I always say, I don't care what's in your product. What does your customer want? What do they need? Because that's all that matters. If you're going to try to convince me how great your book is, start by saying to me, I interviewed 100 of my customers over a period of 30 days, one-on-one, and I listened to the words that they said. And here's the biggest fear, problem, frustration, anxiety that they said, and here are the words that they used to describe it. If you walk up to me and you start talking to me and saying things like that, I'm going to know that you're creating good stuff. It's going to already be apparent. But you probably won't. You'll say, I wrote this book on how to hit the golf ball, and I teach this great technique. And I'm going to say, yeah, but what does the customer want? And you're going to say, well, they want what I already put in the book. It's backwards thinking, cart before the horse thinking. Marketers think in needs first. Marketers also never expect a customer to buy. In fact, marketers expect the customer to not buy what they're selling. Marketers know that 8 or 9 out of 10 things they try to sell, it's not going to work. That ad's not going to work, that piece isn't going to work, this appeal isn't going to work. You follow me? Marketers know that it probably won't work. So they turn their brains on and they make every single thing count. Also, marketers have no attachment to what works or what doesn't. They write a book, they create an information product, they write an ad. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Fine, I'm not attached. Because in the long run, I'm going to find what works, and I'm going to build a system out of it. And I'm going to McDonaldize it. I'm going to turn it into a system that just works day and night. And instead of thinking about, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this whole renovation, what McDonald's thinks about is, can we add another thing to the menu? And how does that change the yield? How does that change the profit model? How can we make an extra 0.5% profit by changing the menu a little bit? That's how McDonald's thinks, because they're testers. And they have franchise prototypes set up in different markets where they make tweaks and changes, and they're changing things all the time. And when they find something that works, they then roll it out. That's the way marketers think. They know most things that they try aren't going to work. Again, experts, they're confident. I'm going to run this ad. Everyone's going to love it. I'm putting all my time and attention into this book, and everybody's going to buy it. Marketers also test. Okay, marketers test everything. So they think about a need, then they narrow their niche, and then they go test. And if customers vote with their money, then they say, it works. It never works until the customer votes with their money. A very important rule. It doesn't work until the customer has voted with their money. I was talking to Dan Sullivan, who's kind of probably the leading trainer of entrepreneurs in the world, introduced by my friend Joe Polish, who's here in the audience. And I was talking to Dan about the idea of asking how what a lot of people do that are in marketing or getting into marketing or information products is they write an ad or they design a logo or they do something in their business, and then they go ask all their friends, hey, what do you think about this? Or even worse, they ask all the people that work with them, hey, what do you think of this? And everyone's got an opinion, right? Opinions are like noses. Everybody has one, okay? And so we like to put our, oh, I don't like that, that's a weird color, or that looks too feminine, or that, and everybody puts their, and Dan said something very simple. He said, ask check writers. Those are the people you want to ask. If you want to get good feedback, call up the people that have given you money and say, hey, what do you think of this? And even that isn't quite there because people don't actually know what they want. They don't know what they pay for before they see it. So you actually have to test it. You got to get it out there, and when people vote with their money, that's when it worked. Bottom line, marketers who think in needs and niches, they're the ones that make all the money in information product marketing. They're the ones that make the big money in information product marketing, the ones that think in needs and niches. And the ones that think about their knowledge and how to be famous and all that kind of stuff, they're the ones that are struggling. So I said marketers think in needs and niches. I'm going to hammer you on the needs part. Okay, you're not going to finish this program without understanding that it all starts with thinking about the customer's need. What we're going to do now is we're going to dive into the idea of niches, thinking in niches and choosing a niche. Because this is something that stumps a lot of people. It stumps them because they think, I've got to choose my niche and then I'm going to be successful. I got to pick my niche. Almost like, picking a niche is like picking a lottery ticket number or something. I got to pick the lottery ticket number and kind of get on with it then. Niches are not something that you choose and then they work and then the game is over. Okay, a niche is something that's a living, breathing thing that evolves over time. You start by choosing your initial niche that you're going to test, ideally by doing some research and talking to customers and narrowing it. But then you refine it over time. You narrow it over time. Now it helps if you're looking for a pine tree to know that they're often found in forests. It also helps to know that if you're looking for a successful information product niche, that they're often found within what I call the mega niches. And there are three what I call mega niches, which are the main niches where most of the money is made in information products. And these three mega niches are money and business, finance, health and fitness, and dating and relationships. Money, health, relationships. A friend of mine was quoting some statistics at one point, and I also haven't followed up on these. I like making stuff up too, so I'll throw that in a little bit here and there. But he said that these niches sell, I think, between 5 and 15 or 20 times the amount as other niches. They're very successful. I think the reason for this, by the way, is because they're really the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, if you've got money, and you've got health, and you've got good relationships, what else do you need in life? I mean, everything's all good at that point. You can kind of weather any storm, you can handle anything. But if you don't have one of those, all your attention goes right to it. You can have all the money in the world, and you can have the best relationships in the world, but if your health is failing, your quality of life is a little weird. Okay, and you're going to be working on that health. If you've got all the money in the world, and you've got all the health in the world, but you've got no relationship in your life, you've got no love, how big of a hole are you going to feel? Okay, so this is like the foundation. These are the cornerstones of the Maslow's pyramid, and I think that's just the simple, logical reason why it works. And in addition, these aren't logical issues. These are irrational issues. These are emotional issues. These are deep things that we come wired from birth wanting. We want security, we want relationship, we want health, and we'll do anything for it. So, if you choose a niche within money, health, or relationships, you're going with the flow. You're choosing a good horse to ride. If you choose a niche outside, and there are some that work, some hobbies, there's a lot of passion involved and so forth. It can be okay, but if you go against these, you're really then trying to reinvent the wheel. And especially if you're getting started, you're probably going to be paddling upstream very hard, and it very well may not work. So, within each of these niches, if you're choosing a niche, you want to do what I call narrowing your niche. It turns out that most human beings don't like to narrow their thinking. They like to widen their thinking. And ironically, they do it in a very closed-minded way because they don't even realize that they're doing it. So the weight loss expert writes a great book about weight loss, and it's amazing, and they've put all this time and effort into it. And then by the time they get ready to release it, they say, this book is actually about more than just weight loss. This book is a complete, total health makeover. I'm going to call it the Total Health Makeover. Because if you do all the stuff in here to lose the weight, you're going to be totally healthy. So they widen, they expand their thinking. But what happens when it moves from weight loss up to all of health? The message becomes thin. It's like taking a laser beam that's only a few watts that can cut through steel and saying, you know what, all those photons are too focused. Let's make a light bulb and just broadcast the light out in all directions. The trick is to narrow. Okay, we actually want to become narrow-minded in this case. We want to narrow our thinking. When you walk into a drugstore and you've got a headache, okay, you walk in, you got a headache, you go over to the aisle where they have all the different types of pills to fix headaches. What are you looking for? You're looking for a headache medication, right? You're looking for something that says headache on the label. Okay, you don't pick up some weird tube of stuff like in the old Saturday Night Live skit and like squirt it in your ear and then go, birth control pills. Okay, that wouldn't make any sense. What if you walked into the drugstore, you had a headache, and there was the Advil and the Excedrin and all the headache medications, but up on the top shelf was a big giant blue bottle, and on it said, medicine. And then underneath it, it said, cures everything. And you had like a pounding headache. Would you buy it? I mean, you'd probably stand there looking at it and shaking your head, and you'd be like, this is the dumbest person I've, duh. Even with a headache, you'd laugh at it. And yet we don't laugh at ourselves when we go from the weight loss book to the total health book. In fact, we think we're geniuses, when what we've actually done is we've taken our excellent headache cure and we put it in a blue bottle and we've called it medicine. You follow? One of my favorite stories about narrowing a niche comes from Johnson & Johnson. Al Reese and Jack Trout talk about this. Johnson & Johnson created the #1 baby shampoo, Johnson & Johnson's baby shampoo back in the day. Now, they had a great shampoo, obviously. They could have marketed it as people shampoo. Or they could have called it soap. Because I'm sure it does a good job washing cars, or whatever. But they didn't. They're smart marketers. So they narrowed their focus. They became narrow-minded. They narrowed their niche. And they created Johnson & Johnson's baby shampoo. And a great message: won't make your baby cry. People saw that and said, wow, bam. They created a new category, a new niche, and it quickly became the #1 baby shampoo. But then something ironic happened. Does anyone know what it is? It then became the #1 adult shampoo as well. Because people looked at it and said, well, if it's gentle enough for babies and it won't make them cry, I don't like shampoo in my eyes either. And so adults started buying it. That's what happens when you narrow your niche and you become focused. The modern example of that is Neutrogena. Neutrogena soaps, the pure soaps. And they started their marketing with the brilliant marketing of use Neutrogena every couple of weeks to wash off the residue and the buildup from your other soap and shampoo. Right? So people said, oh, well, that sounds good. I should start using this. But then they reasoned, why don't I just use this all the time so I don't have the buildup? And that drove Neutrogena to #1 in their categories. That's narrowing your niche. That's finding the hot button. That's marketing genius. That's brilliance. Do you think that Johnson & Johnson's baby shampoo was really that fantastic of a shampoo? I don't know. You think Neutrogena soap is really that fantastic of a soap? I don't know. I mean, what they brag about is that they're so pure. I mean, it's probably like water and like some natural food coloring and some kind of weird thing that makes it stick together. We rub it on ourselves and it foams up and we go, yeah, it's working. I don't know. But I know it's good marketing, and I know the way they did it was by narrowing their niche. So here's the way we narrow our niche. We eliminate 80%. Or more specifically, we focus on only the most powerful 20%. So what you want to do as you're narrowing your niche is you want to eliminate 80%. One of the things we'll maybe talk about a little bit later when we talk about copywriting and marketing that I like to teach is you want to alienate your non-prospect. You want your message to turn off your non-prospect. When they hear it, they go, ew. Ew. Say that, ew. Do you know that feeling when you get the heebie-jeebies? Like, ugh. Anyone get the heebs once in a while? Only a few people? Jeez, I thought everybody did. I get them once in a while, like, ew. Ugh. Who hasn't had the heebie-jeebies in a long time? Oh, so everybody does get them. Okay. It's like a few people here that their heebie-jeebie mechanism isn't working. You want people to get the heebs. You want them to go, oh, no, that is not for me. You want most people to do that. Why? Because I know that if most people are doing that, that your prospect, your customer, is probably looking at it and saying, wow, somebody understands me. Somebody gets it. I haven't heard someone talk this clearly to me in my whole life. You're speaking my language. Got it? You're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. Ironically, in most cases, narrowing your niche intelligently captures more market. Okay, so intelligently, with education, narrowing your niche, getting really focused, it actually captures more market. Now, we talked about two aspects, needs and niches. And experts that are narrowing their niche, they focus on needs, on unmet needs. So the niche starts with a need. It always starts with a need that's inside a customer that they can't fulfill. Now, I've got a 3-question test that I like to use, that I recommend that you use whenever you're creating a niche. This is how you start. Does my prospect have an emotional need? And then write down the word irrational. Irrational. Okay, does my prospect have a strong emotional need? Number 2, is my prospect proactively looking for solutions? Have they gotten to the point where they're motivated enough to start looking for the solution to their problem or the answer to their question? And number 3, does my prospect have few or no perceived options from their perspective? Few or no perceived options from their perspective. Emotional, irrational need, proactively looking for solutions, few or no perceived options. Most information product ideas that people share with me when I meet them, they usually get 3 no's. In other words, their customer doesn't have a strong emotional need, their customer isn't proactively looking for options, and their customer does think that they have multiple options for a solution. You follow? If you can get 3 yeses, is there an unmet emotional need, an irrational need? Is the customer proactively looking for solutions, and do they have few or no perceived options from their perspective? You owe it to yourself to test that niche out, because that niche has a high probability of working. You follow? Now, once you find that, then what you want to do is eliminate 80% and focus on only the most powerful 20%. Okay, so once you get 3 yeses, then you want to focus. Then you want to narrow. You want to narrow in on that need that someone has. I did it with my original stuff that we created in the dating advice world. The way I did it was I looked at the marketplace, and I happened to know a thing or two about niches and positioning. And I said, relationships, there are a million books on relationships. You go into the bookstore, there's whole sections on relationships. But there really isn't anything on dating that most people know about. If I stopped 100 people on the street and I said, where do you go to buy a car? They would say, I go to Ford or BMW. I said, where do you go for your dating advice? They would say, I don't even know what you're talking about. Didn't know there was somewhere you could go. But I also knew, and here's the key piece, that there was a very strong emotional, irrational drive in the dating portion of the relationship experience. That this is where people were facing all of their insecurities, and this is where they were facing all their fears. Right? This is where all the demons were coming up for them. And so I carved off just that piece, and I then carved it off further, and our first stuff was only dating advice for men. See where this is going? So I chopped off the 80% of relationship that happens later on, And then I chopped off half of it by only talking to men. So I narrowed it even further. And then within that, I went into very, very narrow areas where I knew people were looking for solutions. Okay, things like online dating. And we made that into a specific product that's its own niche, essentially. So continually refining and chopping off 80% and refining and chopping off 80% and focusing on emotional or rational needs, looking where people are already looking for solutions and where they have few or no perceived options. This doesn't end. You can keep going and going and going. And my experience, the more focused you can get, the more success you can have. So we're going to do an exercise right now. And the exercise is identifying, choosing, and narrowing your niche. If you already have a niche, you can use it with your niche. If you are just figuring out your niche right now, hopefully you're getting a better idea. So we're going to start with a mega niche, or at least a high emotional value niche, where your prospect is out looking for solutions, they're really amped up. We're going to focus on the problem that the customer has, or the result that they want, okay? And we're going to try to make it external and tangible. This is a key, external and tangible. The way that I can connect with you quickly out here in the real world is by connecting on something that exists in the real world, something tangible. If we both like the same kind of music, bam, I can relate to you now. If we both like the same kind of car, I can relate to you now. If we both have the same problem out here in the world, I can relate to you quickly. On the other hand, if I say, oh, you know, I don't have joy in my life, or I'd like to have a bigger vision for myself, or I'd like happiness or satisfaction, we can't communicate on those because they mean a million different things to a million different people. Just talk to any two people that love each other and look at how different they feel, and look at how different those two paradigms are. So we're going to focus on a problem or a result that they want, and it's something that's external and tangible, that can be measured and seen. Now we're going to narrow to the emotional 20%. We're going to eliminate 80%, and then if you can, narrow again. Within that 20%, we want to find the 20% of the 20% that's really the emotional hot button. So you heard me say I took relationships and I knocked off 80%, and I went to just dating advice. And I even went further, knocked off 50%, just men. Then I dove way into a little tiny piece called online dating. Because I knew that there were a lot of men out there that wanted to figure out how to date online and weren't having any success, and that most of the men that went online and tried to do online dating got no response at all and were very frustrated, and I knew they were searching online looking for information about how to set their profile up. You follow? So we're narrow, narrow, narrow. And then ultimately, name your niche based on what your customer wants. You want to name your niche. It took me a long time, actually. It took me probably a couple of years to figure out the name dating advice. It seems so obvious in retrospect, but that's what my customer is looking for. They're looking for dating advice. That's our niche. We created it. We built it. We became number one. Naming your niche is a little bit more advanced. We're not going to be able to go too deeply into that, but that's like a little bit of advanced work that you'll be able to do later. So right now, do this. You're going to work for maybe about 5 or 7 minutes. You're really going to challenge yourself. You're going to apply the 3-question test. Emotional need, proactively looking for solutions, few or no perceived options. Focus on the problem or the result that they want, the emotional need that they have. And then we're going to chop off 80%. And we're only going to focus on the emotional 20%. And then we're going to chop off 80% again. And we're only going to focus on the emotional 20% of the emotional 20%. You got me? You understand what to do? Is anyone confused? Does anyone not understand what we're doing? Okay, we're going to do about 5 or 7 minutes. You got to go fast, okay? We don't have the luxury in the live program here of spending too much time on this, this one piece. You're going to get a lot more as we go deeper. but go. Start with a mega niche. Focus on the problem the customer has or the result they want. Make it external and tangible, and then knock off 80%. Eliminate 80%. Focus on the emotional 20%. This is not a break, ladies and gentlemen. Not a break.